Hello and welcome back, fans of MTG Burgeoning. Here we are, it's Friday. That means it's Kitchen Table Series Friday, and this is deck number 31. And in today's video, we are going to take a look at an Azorius Hexproof deck. What's up, MTG Burgeon Knights? It is time for the kitchen table. We are back for our 31st deck tech. MTG Burgeoning's longest running series is up to deck number 31. And here today, right now, we are going to unload a deck tech for an Azorius Hexproof deck. Now, in the description, I usually say how some decks are fun to play, and some decks are overpowered, some decks are fair, some decks are unfair. I'll leave it up to you by letting me know in the description below whether you think this deck is fun or not fun. As is generally customary here during the Kitchen Table series, we're going to begin with our land base, and we are going to start with 7 basic planes. And because you know how much MTG Burgeoning loves his symmetry, 7 basic islands. So that's 14 basic, 7 plains, 7 islands. 1 playset of Glacial Fortress. It is the Azorius Checkland. It will enter the battlefield untapped as long as we control a plains or an island. 4 copies of Glacial Fortress. Rounding out our mana base, making this our lands up to 22, is going to be 4 copies of Prairie Stream, the battle lands from Battle for Zendikar. They enter the battlefield tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. 4 copies of Prairie Stream, so that's 22 lands, 14 basics, 4 check lands, and 4 battle lands. Rounding out our mana base, because of course this is the kitchen table, and just because we can, 1 Soul Ring right in the middle, because, well, that's what we do. Okay, so some early game disruption for our opponents as we try to set up shop with our hexproof creatures, which are going to be maddeningly tough for our opponents to deal with. We're going to play with a full playset of Vapor Snag. For just 1 blue, we return target creature to its owner's hand, and its controller loses 1 life. 4 copies of Vapor Snag. Now, admittedly, 4 copies of Swords to Plowshares may be a more effective way to deal with those early threats. Experientially, with this deck, particularly because we're trying to run in and run out against multiple opponents, the gaining life of our opponents sometimes is not as beneficial to us. So I can be talked into exchanging a playset of Vapor Snag for a playset of Swords to Plowshares, or maybe even a playset of Path to Exile. But for me, for my deck, for the way this plays, the Vapor Snag works very well. Alright, after Vapor Snag, we are going to play with a full playset of Oblivion Ring. When it enters the battlefield, exile another target non-land permanent, and when Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield, return the exile card to the battlefield under its owner's control. 4 copies, 1 playset of Oblivion Ring. Alright, now let's talk about some of the auras that we are going to attach to these hexproof creatures that we're dealing with. We have 2 different playsets of 3 CMC auras, and the first is going to be from Shadows over Innistrad, Invocation of Saint Traft. For 1 white and a blue, this aura reads, whenever enchanted creature attacks, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Exile that token at the end of combat. So the Invocation of Saint Traft is pretty much an aura form of the Geist of Saint Traft. 4 copies, Invocation of Saint Traft. And our last set of auras, another playset. This is going all the way back to the time of Shadowmoor. We are going to play with a full playset of Steel of the Godhead. For 2 and an Azorius hybrid mana. It's an aura that gives enchanted creature +1/+1 and lifelink if it's white. +1 and +1. I'm sorry, +1/+1 and unblockable if it's blue. So for those of you keeping track at home, if we have an Azorius colored creature that Steel of the Godhead is going to enchant, then that Azorius creature is going to get +2/+2 lifelink and unblockable. And yes, folks, if you remember, this is an Azorius Hexproof deck. So we'll be dealing with Hexproof creatures that are going to be getting +2/+2 lifelink and unblockability, pairing with the Invocation of Saint Traft, also having to deal with 4/4 angry attacking angels every time the creature is turned sideways in combat. 4 copies of Steel of the Godhead, totaling 8 auras in this deck. And our last non-creature spell, just for the purposes of if the game stretches longer than should expect and we need to either gain some life, draw some cards, or do both, 1 copy of Sphinx's Revelation. X white and 2 blue. As an instant, you gain X life and you draw X cards. Sphinx's Revelation, 1 copy, in order to help us out with our life or with the cards in our hand. All right, so let's start rolling out our creatures. Now, I will immediately let everyone know, not every creature in this deck is hexproof. They aren't all hexproof, but they definitely are all Azorius. So let's start by going from CMC 2 all the way through 4. We're going back to Shadowmoor to play with 4 copies of Mistmeadow Witch. 1 and a hybrid Azorius mana for a 1/1 Kithkin Wizard. Not very impressive. However, by tapping 2 white and a blue, we can exile target creature from the game and return that card to play under its owner's control at the end of turn. And I will disclose, I can't remember countless times turn 2 Mistmeadow Witch, turn 3 Steel of the Godhead, turn 4 just sit back and wait for creatures to attack me, only to remove them in order to exile them and not have them attack at all. All the meanwhile, Mistmeadow Witch is sliding in for 3 unblockable lifelink, 3 unblockable lifelink. Do not downplay the importance of Mistmeadow Witch in this deck. 2 good, 4 copies of the Witch. Next up, we are going to CMC 3 again for a full playset of Reflector Mage, the Oath of the Gatewatch Scourge. For 2 and a 3, when it enters the battlefield, return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That creature's owner can't cast spells with the same name as that creature until your next turn. 4 copies of Reflector Mage. Yeah, now we're starting to see how some of the components of this deck are becoming a little less fun for our opponents and a little more powerful for us. Alright, next we are moving to our hexproof creatures. And if you were looking at the potential for foreshadowing with Invocation of Saint Traft, well, foreshadowing complete. Here's a full playset of Geist of Saint Traft. 1 white and a blue, 2/2 hexproof. Whenever Geist of Saint Traft attacks, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Exile that token at the end of combat. So if we slap on a Steel of the Godhead, each turn that we attack with the Geist of Saint Traft, we're attacking with a 4/4 hexproof unblockable lifelinker that also sends a 4/4 angel creature token with flying into combat. If we're fortunate enough to also enchant it with an Invocation of Saint Traft, then we're sending 12 total damage into combat every single time, and all of it has evasion. 4 copies, Geist of Saint Traft. And next up, we are going to show our other 4 hexproof creatures, a full playset of Ascended Lawmage. 2 white and a blue for a flying hexproof 3/2 Vidalcan Wizard. 4 copies, Ascended Lawmage. And lastly, to break through for the last points of lethal damage, we are going to include a full playset, again going back to Shadowmoor, of Thistledown Liege. 1 and 3 Azorius hybrid mana with flash. It's a 1/3, and other white creatures we control get +1/+1, and other blue creatures we control get +1/+1. For all intents and purposes with this deck, that's going to read creatures we control will get +2/+2. Well, the Thistledown Liege won't give it to itself, but for all of these other creatures that are all Azorius colors, this is going to get +2/+2, and that should close out combat. 4 copies, Thistledown Liege. And folks, Burgeonites, that is it. That is deck tech number 31 of the Kitchen Table series. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.